Look, this is your first trip out in 3 years, so don't mess it up. So, I did promise to bring Pan F out to the forest with me on my next trip, and here I am. It's a little bit wetter than I'd hoped for, but given that we've hardly had any rain this year in Britain, well, I'm not going to complain. Just have. Oh, that's very nice, isn't it? In black and white, of course. Now, the 70-year-old Minolta Autocord is not waterproof, but a plastic bag is, so that can sit there while I make my composition. Now, just let me zoom you in slightly on this one, if I can. There we go. I'm trying to get this tree, these two and that one, in obviously a square arrangement. And it's surprising how nice the floating algae on top of the pond is. And with these lighter tree trunks, it does lift the image somewhat. Right, let me do a bit of metering with the dog slow Pan F rated at 50. Now, good thing about the lack or the low contrast this morning is I'm not going to struggle with the highlights and shadows being too excessively wide apart. It's probably only going to be about 3 or 4 stops, which is perfect for this very slow film. Well, I'm getting 8 seconds at f16 on the spot meter, and I'm just going to have to compensate for that, because 8 seconds with reciprocity failure, and you probably can't see the app here, but 8 seconds at f16 comes out at 15 seconds. So 15 seconds at f16, no filters, very slow, a lot slower than I'm used to, and obviously with this camera being mechanical, slowest shutter speed 1 second, so it's cable release time. Okay, you're going to need the stopwatch here, and here we go. I do like to be beside the seaside. I do like to be in the forest as well, but not when it's raining this much. And there we go, hopefully. Now I say hopefully because Minolta's not been out for 3 years, and it's getting dangerously close to that point where you think, shall I sell it? Well, poor old Minolta said to Pan F, neither of us are getting out lately, so we're going to have to make a bit of an effort to convince him. And if we do a good job, we might retain our place in the cupboard.
Well, indeed, they have to earn their place in the cupboard along with all the other junk, cameras I don't use, but yeah, given the results I've got so far today, looking good. Lovely, bright, contrasty, sharp black and white from the Pan F, but also the lens on the Minolta. It's absolutely superb, no problems with it at all.
Do you know, I was looking at these beautiful ferns here, and I'm just literally still stood, set up for the first shot, but this sapling's in the way, and it's just not going to work. But that's made me think I should be looking for more of this sort of stuff, even though I've got a very basic camera. Do you remember on that last trip when I came here, I used the Delta 3200, and it did seem like an odd choice at the time, but it did suit the very bright, harsh conditions. Now, Pan F, even though it's dark and dull and dingy, it does suit these conditions. It's going to be really, really strong and give a lovely glow. So, more by chance than planning, it's worked out well this morning. Now, I often wander down here imagining I'm going to get a shot, and I don't think I ever do. I got one once maybe with a Bronica, but it's actually looking very promising this morning because of the rain, the saturation, but also the arrangement. Ferns, beautiful tree trunks, a bit more overgrown than previously, and I've got a decent line going through. I'm not all about leading lines, but there's a decent line going through. Right, here's what I'm seeing on the preview app, and I'm not going to say what the preview app is because I've said it for years and it's in the description. Here's the arrangement, but the conflicting tree trunks, they're a bit boxy. It's a bit square, to be honest, and that tree bottom does nothing for me at all. So now I know why this composition doesn't work. It's because it just doesn't work. Now, Minolta Autocord doesn't focus very close, probably about 3 feet, which I'm about 2 to 3 feet. Bronica would do this, no trouble at all. The 80mm standard lens on the Bronica is excellent and allows close focusing, quite close focusing. And I have got extension tube, have I? Yes, I have, but I never use them, so I don't need to with the Bronica. But this is going to be a challenge. Now, the other issue with using a twin lens reflex camera like this is I'm viewing through the top viewing lens, but the image is taken through the bottom lens, so I don't see exactly what's in the frame. And that's not a problem when you're shooting at 30 feet or even 15 feet. You can just have a small amount of leeway, but when you're shooting close up like this without one of the parallax adapters or assistance to view more accurately, I have to guess. Now, my bottom lens is going to be seeing more of the bottom of the image than the top lens, so I have to allow for that when I'm shooting. So I'll probably come away slightly further than I would normally and allow myself a little bit of leeway around the edges of the frame. And I also hope you'll forgive me, I'm going to remove a couple of dead leaves from the composition. Now, they are dead leaves, so they could have blown in from one of the trees, they could blow out tomorrow, they could wash away. I'm not going to pluck anything out of the composition which is static, but some of these aren't adding anything to it. They're just a distraction, so I consider that acceptable in this case, although I'm probably going to get flamed now for doing that. Now, I'm getting around about 30 seconds at f22, so it's dark and it's a dark scene and I'm covered by trees, so 30 seconds at f22 with this film is going to give me 1.5 minutes. 1.5 minutes? That's why I don't shoot Pan F very often in the forest. Anyway, that is probably quite a generous exposure, so I'm actually going to go for I think 45 seconds and 1.5 minutes, because I have allowed for a lot of detail to be pulled up out of this shot, but I'll just change your mind. I'm going to shoot at 1 minute and 2 minutes. I am not going to underexpose this film. It will not look good. And I'm just using my Apple Watch to do the timing. I actually prefer my old Casio's because the screen doesn't go blank and the battery lasts for about 25 years. So here we go. Now, another thing I like about using this little camera out in the forest is that it's actually surprisingly easy to use. I've not used it for ages, but it's very small, it's very compact, it's very lightweight, given that it's all metal. I like the fact that even though it's raining and there's rain falling all around me and on the camera a little bit, just close the thing up when you're taking the shot. It's very simple, it's mechanical, unlike my Bronicas, which are starting to play up now and they're starting to worry me. I did a video a few years ago comparing the Bronica system cameras to the Hasselblad 500 series, which I used to own, and I said, on balance, I think the Bronica is probably the better value. Well, the problem is the reliability and the lack of spares and repairability, if that's a word, is becoming a real issue. So hang on a sec, I'm just getting towards the first minute. So I am thinking seriously, long term, do I have to get back into the Hasselblad system? That's the first one. Shutter cocked. Oh.
Well, I think on this one I got acceptable front to back sharpness. Not perfect right at the very front, but it's a ton of detail in there, and I do like that sort of silvery look it's given because it was wet. And Pan F, as I say, is a contrasty film, so I think it's brought out the best in the fine detail of these ferns.
So anyway, the point about the reliability of mechanical devices, I typically find that the mechanical cameras initially need more work and regular maintenance than electronic cameras. I had a Hasselblad 501 CM for a few years and the backs would need servicing. Sometimes I had a bit of an issue with the mirror and the sliding mechanism on that model, but it was all fixable, and there are a lot of people who can fix Hasselblad still, and you can still get the parts. Parts are being made for them, 3D printing, etc. Not so with the Bronica. It's going to be extinct at some point. Now, I've got a few examples so I can keep shooting for a while. It does make me wonder if I should invest or reinvest in a 500 series camera. They are lovely devices. I wouldn't say necessarily the lenses are any better than the Bronica, although the wide angle is, particularly the 50mm, superb on the Hasselblad and not so good on the Bronica. But you are going to have to find a lot more money. I think it's going to cost you about probably 5 or 6 times as much to set up a good Hasselblad outfit as it is a basic Bronica one. Now, I've taken this shot quite a few times and I'm going to take it again because I love the composition, and it's different. It's always different in the forest. I got a dead branch here, so I've got a bit of differentiation amongst all the greens, but I do like the way it leads through, and some beautiful fine tree trunks bringing you in across the frame, so the balance is beautiful. Just wait for the cars, wait for the cars, wait for the cars. Well, I reckon on this one, probably 15 seconds at f22 is adequate with the reciprocity failure. I'm going to do one at 8 as well, though, because I don't want to have it too dense, the negative, when I work on it. And if I want to print it in the darkroom later, you know, it's going to take a lot of burning in. So I think I'll go for, 8 and 15.
Well, this particular scene never really fails me. I do like the composition, even though that fallen tree trunk is cutting across the frame. I think the way it builds up from the frame and there are overlapping branches makes up for it. And also, I've got a little bit of foreground in there with some light touches, which generally leads the eye through very well.
So I am revisiting many of my favourite little haunts in the forest today, and make no excuses about that, because I'm shooting with what to me is a very unfamiliar camera, the little Minolta. I don't even know if it's working properly, to be honest, because the little leaf shutter is so silent you can hardly hear it open and close, so they may be all blank, these negatives, and if they are, I'll still put the video out. As you're watching now, you'll know that, because you've got to take the rough with the smooth. It doesn't always work out, and these are the perils of using old film cameras. Things go wrong, so I've got to shoot things I'm familiar with, because the camera is enough of a challenge this morning without having to find unique and interesting compositions. Oh, obviously I'll get those as well. So just thinking a bit more about the little Minolta Autocord, generally the cameras of that era. I mean, they've actually got, some of them, like the Minolta, superb optics. The lens on that Minolta is absolutely fantastic. I love the way it works. But it's just that the ergonomics of the camera aren't the best. They're not as nice to use as later cameras. The controls are very fiddly. The focus lever at the bottom. I know some TLRs have the knob, which is better. Setting the aperture and the shutter speed are slow. You know, if I took that out on my mountain walks, yes, it would be manageable, and I've taken it once before, but I miss shots, you know, I do miss shots. Now, the limitation of the single lens on many of these, unless you go for some of the Mamiya system TLRs, isn't too bad in the forest, because if you notice from my many videos from here, I typically use the 80mm lens anyway, the standard lens, maybe the short telephoto. But I'm not really missing out today by just having that beautiful 80mm and that square format. So it's horses for courses. It will suit certain places and certain styles of shooting very well. But the reason they died out and they were replaced by the 35mm SLR for sort of journalism, reportage, travel, etc. It's simply because the 35mm camera is just a lot more flexible and easier to use. Well, that one may divide opinion. Composition was a bit unusual, and I also used a very shallow f11, which is going to provide a bit of background blur, hopefully not foreground blur on the tree. And I think I've got time for one more shot in the forest this morning, before heading back to the car and some development. Not sure what to develop it in, to be honest. Maybe Rodinal with the Pan F. Diluted 1:50 is superb, but it depends what I've got lying around. You know, I'll say one thing for shooting with the Minolta this morning with its fixed 80mm lens. It makes things a lot easier, and I notice this when I go out with my simple toy cameras or my fixed focal length rangefinders. When you've got one lens, you have to use your eye to do the composition. You can't say, oh, I wonder if it'll work with the telephoto, I wonder if it'll work with a wide. You haven't got those, so if the composition can't be made to work with the lens you've got, you move on very quickly, and I'm finding myself working a lot quicker this morning and actually finding reasonable compositions because I've got far fewer choices. It's like when you're trying to buy a new car. If they made a small, medium and large in 3 different colours, it'd be a damn sight easier for all of us. Right, I speak to you from the side of the road, and I really don't like shooting from here because it's by a road and I'm right next to the road, but there is a nice composition. Now this is something I drive past a lot, and as you can see you've got a very prominent tree here and the supporting cast in the background, but it flows through beautifully. I've got this nice foliage. Don't know if I can hold that actually, because it's actually very close for medium format. But I think f22, a couple of frames, this is well worth it if I survive and don't get splattered by a car. Well, I've survived long enough to set the shot up roughly, so a bit of metering, f22. Where's the darkest shadow? 4 seconds. 4 seconds. A bit darker down there, though, isn't it? 4 seconds f22. That normally bring it up to 1 second with the old zone 3, but I'm going to go for 2 seconds. 2 seconds. I'm going to be a bit more generous. At least if the shutter doesn't fire properly, I might get at least a second's worth of exposure out of it. Or I could even take one at 1 second, couldn't I? Do you have to take one at 1 second? I can at least use the mechanical shutter's inbuilt timer, and I can hear that working. So I think I'll go 1 second and 2 seconds. Okay, let's go for the 2 seconds. 1000, 2, 1000. Ooh, a bit slow coming off there, that shutter, wasn't it? Eek. It was a bit laggy. Rather overexposed than underexposed though. That's the thing you find about most of these old cameras, is the shutters get slower. So it's not that bad if you're using a negative film like this, but here we go. 1 second. That's not bad. I like that mechanical timer. And that'll do us.
Well, in this instance, the 2 second, or more like 3 second exposure was far better. The 1 second was thin. It's probably worth mentioning that the very first shot you saw in this vlog didn't come out. The shutter didn't fire at all because it hadn't been used for a long time. I did exercise it a bit before I came, but still needed some use.
Right, as I try to make it back to the car in one piece, final thoughts. Mechanical cameras, great, and not so great. Do you know, when electronic stuff works, it works brilliantly, it's accurate. You think, and if those of you are old enough to remember, you think back to the days of points timing on motorbikes and cars, when you had to set the gap with your little bit of feeler gauges or your fag paper, and when it went off gradually. It started to misfire, it started to get worse performance, but it still worked. Now the problem is with electronics, when they break, that's it. Sorry, car coming. When electronics fail, they fail typically completely. Same with your TV, you know, with the old analog signal when it was snowing or rainy. Gradually degraded, is a new word. It degraded, it got worse, but you could still watch the image. Nothing worse than a digital image breaking up. It goes, and you can't see a blooming thing, and it drives you nuts. So it's very similar with this camera. It's working, but it's got its quirks. It's not perfect, and it might need a clean, lubricate and adjust, and that costs money. And if you don't use it very often, is it worth it? So I tend to sit on the fence between electronic and manual film cameras. Obviously no choice with digital. I like both. And really, to be honest, if you're going to run mechanical cameras, you should have just 2 or 3 of them and keep them maintained and get regularly serviced, and they'll be fantastic. Electronics, old cameras, you need lots of them. If one fails, you go and get another one, and that one becomes a donor camera in the future. So there's my ramble over for the day. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope the images come out. I'll see you again on the next one.